Hey, welcome back to the feedback show. That's what we're calling it now. To Content Marketing World Chatter. Sorry, we got a little sound bouncing off here. I hope, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
So it wasn't just me.
No.
Because I hear a couple of voices during the day. Now, one of them's Tony, our producer, and that's
right.
that's in here. But he's always watching this. Chris White, Capital One.
That's right.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, listen, you're here. You're speaking tomorrow.
Correct.
What's your topic?
Why you should date your audience.
Why?
It sounds weird. I think the title is actually why you should treat your audience like you're dating them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wasn't it? I think the original title you submitted was Tinder for content marketing.
Something like that.
That's
yeah.
right. And
then that got axed by our PR
no,
team.
They said no.
That's
they
right.
Said no. So you cleaned it up a bit.
It did.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dating.
Yeah.
In this scenario, can we keep it in here, please?
Sure.
Is that fair? What's the first step?
Well, so the whole thing is like an analogy of,
dating.
Yes. So if I asked everybody in this conference who 99% of them never met.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just sat on my mic. Pick it up again. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
All right.
So if I asked everybody in this conference, 99% of them have never met before, if they would marry me, nobody would say yes because they don't know who I am.
Stop right there. I'm going to stop you right there. You're being a little too hard on yourself, Chris.
I appreciate it.
Can we get a line of folks together and let's
That's
do
right.
some sampling? Okay, go ahead.
But a lot of times our advertising or our marketing is doing just that. We're sending these product ads or whatever we're selling straight to a cold audience. That's very analogous to saying, I just met you, you want to marry me. So the whole session is around, if you take that mindset where it's like people are still humans, then it changes your perception of how you should be marketing. Maybe the cold product ad isn't the way to go. Maybe you should start out with something more relevant and date them. So that's the kind of the whole theme of tomorrow's session.
Gotcha.
So I think to your original question of like, how does the dating start? I think you got to know who you're talking to or who's your type, using the analogy.
Right.
And I think that whittles down the noise of just like, if you know that this is your target audience, it's easier for you to become more relevant to them because you know what makes them tick, you know what they like. And then over time, you can build up that trust, that relationship. Right. And then you do that through like all of the content marketing we talk about, but it also comes into like the timing of when do you ask for that second date? When do you actually want to try to get them to convert or buy your product or sign on to your service? But I think the key is kind of centering down on who your target is and then treating them like a human, not assuming that because they're in your target audience, they're ready to convert and or marry you right away.
So how will you cover some areas on like how you determine who your target is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I've got this kind of sexy one-liner that's 10% of 40 is more than 4% of 100. And
okay, wait.
Math-wise, it's the same.
I was told there'd be no math on this interview.
I know. Obviously, 10% of 40 is 4 of 100 is also 4. But the concept is, just because you're whittling down your target to that 40 doesn't mean you're missing out on the 60. It actually enables you to get more specific, then create more relevant content so that you're not missing out. You don't have to feel like you're missing out on the majority of your target.
Now look, sadly, that's a big mind shift change, I think. Because we think of the pie chart. I want all of it.
I want all of it.
And it's really difficult to change people's opinions, I think, and help them understand the value of like, let's be meaningful. Let's really be meaningful to a small group of people, a subsection, and I think that's part of it. Joe Pulizzi talked about this a bit in his keynote about, it comes down to focus, a lot of it, and saying no, and really the internal communications, how we do it, need to do a better job internally of communicating, getting our marketing people on board to say, look, there's value in being a little bit more specific here.
Absolutely. And then I think there's this other component where the more specific you can get, that enables your creative or the message you're saying to be very almost alienating, but in a positive way, where it's like if I'm talking to people that love dogs, I can say, something about German Shepherds without making the cat people mad because you're okay with being very specific to that like very small niche audience.
Right. Well, look, one thing I learned from stand-up comedy is that when I first started writing, I have a joke And then I'd say, let me make this a little bit more general. Let me just generalize some of the truth here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still true, but I would generalize some of the specifics so it applies to more people. And I learned that's the exact wrong thing to do.
Right.
Because the more specific you make your story, the more universally it applies, because, or at least what I feel is that the truth resonates in those details that you get.
Absolutely.
You know, people feel that and they believe that when you get very specific about things. And but it is still hard to look, unless you've been up there on stage and bombed a few times, you know, and experienced it. I think it's hard for people to get that message that, and there's a temptation of let's market to everybody.
Right, and as soon as you start generalizing it, you make all these compromises on what you're saying because you're trying to account for so many opinions or viewpoints, or to try to resonate with everybody. And the reality is, the wider that focus is, it's the less relevant you become to everybody.
Right.
So it's the inverse effect of what you're trying to compensate for.
Yes. Now, what time is your session tomorrow?
It's at 10:15 tomorrow.
10:15. Now, are you gonna talk a little bit about some of that process as well?
Absolutely.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Right. And do you have is there anything you have online that we could read, like on a blog post or anything where you cover some of this as well?
Not necessarily on Capital One's public properties. It's kind of like we're talking about stuff under the hood.
Right.
It's ironic though, because I wrote a post about that very title of my session back in 2017 on LinkedIn.
Oh, really?
And I've probably presented this session 3 or 4 times now, and I've just, it's very meta. I'm repurposing that content for other context. And so on my LinkedIn, I've got a couple series where it talks about, being more specific, or, that 10% of 40 is the way to break through all the clutter in today's marketing.
So how can we find that? Can we find you just at Chris White, Capital One, LinkedIn? Is that where we go?
That's pretty much it.
And
One
we
of
can
the
dig
top
through
guys up there.
and find that blog post.
Yeah.
Luke, would you also mind retweeting or tweeting us a link after this to that blog post? And just with the Content Marketing World hashtag?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Listen, anything else you'd like to cover on the things that you're working on there at the shop in DC?
I think, one of the key things that I'm going to talk about is we see 10,000 ads a day. And so the key isn't quality or quantity. The key is relevancy. And quality can be very subjective. I've got this example where I had a leak on a faucet in my kitchen, and I YouTubed how to fix a faucet. The first thing that comes up is this piece of crap video, 14 minutes long, shot on a cell phone, and you would have thought I was watching Titanic for the first time. I was enthralled in it because it was super relevant for me in that moment. It was the guy walking through how to fix this faucet. And so if you look at it at face value, it's a terrible video.
Right.
The guy even puts the phone down to fix the faucet. It's terrible. But all the comments were like, this is amazing. You just helped me fix my faucet. And so I think honing in on that relevancy, kind of pair that with being very specific in who your target is, and that allows you to clear mentally of just this is what I'm going after, and I have permission to go do that.
That's right. So if you're relevant and can solve my problem, I'll sift through a bunch of other issues you have with your content.
That's right.
And hang tight on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
man.
awesome. Hey, listen, thank you for joining us, Chris. I appreciate
Thank you for having me.
And we'll check out your post, your LinkedIn post, and dig into this a bit more. And break a leg tomorrow. I hope it goes well.
You.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for having me.